Welcome again. The webinar today really, I guess, is going to be focusing on DMPs, data management platforms, programmatic media, and how to use what we're calling data-informed decision-making to improve your marketing effectiveness and media efficiency. And as I said, we're very grateful that you took the time to register and join us today. I guess just as a bit of brief background to the topic, I'd say, I guess it's well known to us all that digital marketing and media is critical in today's marketplace. It's where consumers are and it's where brands have to be. But equally, I guess we should consider why it's so important. And for me, offers digital capability in the hands of consumers, and that's devices or shopping online or engaging with apps or engaging with social media. Now, digital capability has created or enabled the creation of a very powerful consumer. And consumers, I would say, and by the way, when I'm referring to consumer, don't think I'm referring to someone unlike myself or unlike you. It's all of us. But us as consumers are empowered. We or they can buy from who they like, when they like, and where they like. And that's clearly brought benefits for many of our businesses and hopefully all of your businesses. But one of the reasons they are more empowered is because of the devices that they own and what they can do with them. And we talk about that in the context of hyperconnectivity. The device and the ability to buy has never been easier. So whilst they are connected to you, clearly they can also connect to your competitors. We'd also say that connectivity can also more easily allow the expression of an opinion. As we know, good news travels fast, but so can a bad review. And again, we think that enables vocalism, opinions from consumers, and we would say that that demands to be listened to and understood. But in reality, all of this is set against the backdrop of you just trying to do your job. And for most of us, that job probably hasn't changed that much in the last few years. We all, by and large, need to recruit, grow, and keep customers. But it's harder in part because of this new consumer, and then again in part because of the proliferation of the channels, the people, the consumers are engaging in. And that brings us directly back to digital marketing and media. All of this, or most of it, happens on devices, in digital channels, on apps, and is enabled, in our view, by data. So there are many benefits, I guess, to digital marketing that is delivered, certainly compared to the concept of traditional marketing, and now's not the time to go into all of them, other than let's reiterate the point I said earlier. The main point is that's where consumers are. Consumers are in that digital channel, so we've got to listen to it. But I would say in terms of a key differentiator, is that when you drill into it, the digital engagement is traceable. Every action leaves a vapor trail of engagement. It may be anonymous, but the trail is still left. And in our view, this has huge implications on all areas of interaction, from optimizing usability to retargeting, or indeed the personalization of content within ads or on your own sites. So if we just think about that for a second, when a consumer lands or indeed loads a page, this sends a request to a server, which returns content and logs the request. So every time a user engages, certainly in the broader sense of the word, with any digital content, somewhere there is a breadcrumb of content or breadcrumb of information or insight left behind. And these breadcrumbs, taken in aggregation, provide a rich seam of data about those individuals. So whilst we do have this hyper-connected and empowered consumer, they are telling us about themselves, and they are telling us about what they do. And the more data we gather, the more complete a picture we or you can draw. That in turn allows us to power more accurate interactions with ever-growing levels of relevancy and personalization. And I think that's fair to say that then starts to tip the scales somewhat back more in your favor. The key, as we know, is being able to gather data at scale, extract those meaningful insights, and apply those insights into your marketing efforts. And the reality is these are challenges that you will be dealing with on a daily basis. Fortunately, and I guess it's the topic of the webinar today, there are techniques and tactics which will enable us to do this. And that's what we'll be talking through today, and really focus on the development of this tool, the data management platform, the DMP. And certainly I'll be looking to address how the development of the DMP has the ability to transform how we use data, how you use data, and deliver that marketing and media efficiency. So in terms of a little bit more detail about what I'll look to cover, I'll start with understanding the history of programmatic advertising. History, it's a fairly short history, but we'll go through it anyway. And we'll start there, in part because it's the fastest growing part of the digital media arena, and certainly where data has a meaningful role to play. Other channels do, of course, as well, whether that's social or search. But I think because programmatic is such a buzzword, certainly when we talk to our clients, it's worth explaining what it is and important that we understand its place, certainly in this complicated world. We'll then look at the rise and the role of the DMP in relation to programmatic advertising and how all the pieces fit together, and then take a deeper dive into what a DMP can do for you and how you can go about seeing the benefits. With that, we have some use cases which certainly should help you envisage the sort of impact this stuff can have, and use cases that should again help you build a business case. And ultimately this is about understanding how a DMP can have an impact on your business and how can you construct a business case to enable the adoption of a DMP within your arena. And that's always one of the biggest stumbling blocks. At the end, we'll have a few FAQs and, as I say, questions from you guys as we go. Okay, so in terms of the birth and evolution of programmatic advertising, the buzzword, as I've already said, we've decided to start here. And the what is programmatic question has been asked a lot, has been answered a lot. You can Google it, there's answers out there. But just to summarise, I guess it's probably well enough understood that it is a means by which digital display advertising can be bought based on bids and where data has a role to inform those bids. But the key point we need to make is that programmatic per se is an execution method. It enables you to govern interactions faster and at a greater rate, but it doesn't necessarily mean those interactions, i.e. those bids for that digital advertising space, are any more smarter or indeed necessarily smart at all. And I think this becomes even clearer when you take a look at the origins of programmatic advertising. I think if you think about traditional media paradigms, broadly speaking, those paradigms or traditional media used context as a proxy for the audience which consumes the content. This means we all made assumptions based on who we thought would be interested in that content. A certain newspaper has a certain type of audience, or a niche magazine has a particular audience persona, etc. We can all list them, we all understand them. And this model was applied to digital advertising when it first arrived, but the problem with this is that the marketer almost was forced to buy inefficiently. Things like section takeover, share of voice, etc. led, in our view, and indeed the view of the market, to wasted spend. But it wasn't good for the publisher either, because it relied on the sales teams to sell all of the inventory that had to be matched to metrics in order to make them remotely relevant. And in every instance where an impression was not sold, that was wasted money or a wasted revenue opportunity. So there were two challenges. Firstly, the publishers wanted to make sure they were getting the best rate on every impression, and marketers wanted to make sure that they were only buying the people they're interested in. And that's the crux. We should never forget this. It's about people, it's not about touch points. And to understand that and to do that, you need data. I've said already that digital engagement leaves a trail of breadcrumbs linked by a device ID, and this ID is sent with every request. So it can be used, or is used, to serve specific content to specific IDs. So now as a marketer, I can potentially buy just the audience, literally just the audience, the people, the collection of IDs that are most valuable to me, the marketer. And that's leads, or should be leading, to a significant improvement in how your money or your budget is spent. But who is the audience? What happens next? Well, what we find is that the publishers have, or what the market found is that publishers have buyers competing for the users, competing for that audience. And the users are generating that given impression, not just a given URL, not just a piece of content on a page. And a fair way to ensure that they were getting the best market price, the publishers were getting the best market price for that impression, it was always going to be via an auction process, hence the rise of something called real-time bidding. And the capability to deliver messages, i.e. creatives, to consumers based on that real-time bid. And therefore, we have programmatic advertising. A very slick way of matching audience types with pre-designed, pre-designated bid values, if you like. But of course, there's no way a marketer can actually manage all of these different strategies at scale across multiple partners and platforms in real time. It's better to have a strategy defined that can then be processed automatically. If you like, a programmatic approach to buying a given impression, and therefore we have what we said is called programmatic advertising. Of course, in order to be smart about who I'm buying, I need to know what that identifier means to me. I want to aggregate all of my data so that I can make the best decision possible. And therefore I need a tool that allows me to transport my consumer insight from whatever repository it lives in and make it available in the programmatic landscape where it can be used in real time. Hopefully you can see where I'm going with this, because that tool is a DMP. Okay, so if we think about a high-level explanation of the DMP, very simply the DMP ingests data from any consumer data repository that you have. It unifies it, brings it together, it unifies it, and then it transmits it to a marketing platform to inform a decision. But critically, really critically, that marketing platform is another user data repository. So it can and should re-ingest data from there, from those execution points if you like, to the DMP to form a feedback loop. So broadly speaking, the DMP connects all of your user data sources to your marketing execution. So it can and should be ingesting all of your campaign data. For example, if we look at the bottom of the screen there, it can and should be ingesting all of your campaign data, what happened when you ran a piece of activity. If you think about third-party data, and that might be from somebody like Experian, but it might be elsewhere, it should be linking and overlaying things like maybe a mosaic description, demographics, trigger or event data, or for those of you on the call who might be involved in lending, a view of potential credit risk. So there's a rich seam of third-party data that can be overlaid into the DMP. Second-party data might be information from things like publishers or partners who can further enhance the profile of a device or a user. And then the site visit or other touchpoint or transactional information that you should be gathering and will be gathering from within your business. I guess it all goes into the pot, that's the point. And when it's into the pot, it can drive a decision, which creates an audience, and this is distributed to an execution channel, as I said. And again, as I said, which creates a new set of data to feed back into the pot, and so the loop begins again. If we think about the rise of the DMP, I guess programmatic, as we've touched on, it is about buying the right audience in real time. But the DMP is the tool that connects any customer data you have to the digital marketing world, and where it allows you to make a better and data-informed decision. The DMP enables your programmatic activity to make better data-informed decision. Programmatic is great, but the DMP can make it work better. I think though if we go beyond that and look at the words that we think about, DMP, data management platform, management is key. Management means control. It allows you to do things that you weren't able to do before. And in our view, that means, as I've said, it ingests every piece of consumer data, whether that's CRM data, web data, marketing exposure data. Every time a consumer engages with any digital media channel, paid, earned, owned, you can collect several hundred individual data points. It allows you to aggregate and sort this data at speed and at scale, and it defines the audiences that exhibit certain behaviours and characteristics. And then it transmits those audiences to any marketing execution platform, where they can be used, as we've said, to inform the decision-making process. You could describe a DMP as the tool that manages and controls how your consumer data is sent to an external system, if we need a single line to do that. But again, going back to our empowered consumer, you now have more of the data you need to help provide the communication or the message or enable the engagement opportunities to buy from you, to engage with your, or perhaps to stay with your brand. It's giving you that control because you have access to the data. I guess so far I've certainly talked about programmatic and DMPs to an extent, how they relate to the programmatic arena. And certainly programmatic is the most mature channel within which DMPs are utilised and seen. But again, it's important not to consider DMPs as a capability that only works in that programmatic arena. The benefits can be seen beyond programmatic, and that's, I guess, what I'm going to talk about now. And to that end, I guess the theory of this and the content that's been created on this is great. It's exciting. There's lots of awesome expressions and theoretical explanations. But we do need to take a proper look at reality. And reality is your business and what it means for you in your job, how you can do that job better, and how your business can outperform your competitors. So, as we've explained, a DMP is mostly a transmission tool that allows you to take data from any source, combine it as you require, and send it to any system you wish. But again, what does it mean for you? Well, I think we'd say, first of all, it provides that central hub for all of your user data. And if we think about this notion of a central hub for all data, that in turn can help you remove data silos, or indeed business silos, team silos. We've certainly seen when we speak to clients, and you may see this yourselves, the notion that not everybody in every part of the business has access to the same data and therefore can make the same or the best decisions about consumers, customers, or indeed prospects. So certainly unlocking that barrier is something we think can deliver significant success and is on the radar of many of you, I'm sure. But beyond that, it can immediately start to surface insight and synergies that just might not have been apparent before. If you didn't know something, how can you have made the right decision? If we bring the data together in one place and there's more data and better data, the chances are you are going to make a better decision at the end of the day. What does that mean? Well, a better decision should also be delivering a more unified marketing effort. I guess also beyond this, audiences can be defined, and this is a really important point. Audiences can be defined using any combination of any data in the DMP. So certainly any combination of data within the DMP that you can access from any of the repositories that are linked. And that can be as broad or as narrow as you wish. And the important word is you there. Note this point. You're in control. The publisher is not defining the audience. The data owner is not defining the audience. It's you and the combination of data that works best for your business that is defining an audience, and it's in your power. I say the DMP manages the transmission of these audiences to your demand-side platform, or indeed other execution platforms as well. Just on the DSP, the demand-side platform, if you're less sure about what that is, we have published content on that, which you can find on our site, or drop us an email and we can give you a bit more of a view and a bit more of a chapter and verse on what they do, strengths and weaknesses. But as I say, the DMP will push that data out to the DSP or other execution platforms. But again, really importantly, it has the ability to ingest the data back from the DSP, to understand the performance of the campaigns in relation to other channels, not just within programmatic media, to allow you to reiterate, improve, and plan more effectively. And that's the feedback loop. And certainly one of the key points about this feedback loop is that you don't actually need to know up front who you're gathering data on. It can be anyone who engages with your campaigns, or indeed anyone who engages with any of your digital media, whether it's paid, as I say, owned or earned. And of course, all of this becomes particularly important when looking into why people did or didn't convert and trying to understand the consumer or customer life cycle. So if we think about how we put DMP capability into a strategy that you can move forward and take forward within your business, Certainly there are many applications. Some of them are right on the cutting edge of sophistication. But we think really, as with anything in life, in business life, we've got to focus on return on investment. It's really important to have a roadmap to that return on investment, that ROI, giving yourself the opportunity to work, certainly giving yourself the opportunity to work towards sophistication, to become that cutting edge user. But in the first instance, the first use cases have to add up, and they have to make sense for your business, and they have to deliver a return to that business. So how do we create a solid business case for investment? Fortunately, the good news, the same DMP instance is used and can be used to support multiple use cases and applications at the same time. So you can choose the ones that are going to be most relevant for you and your business. But if we're thinking about business priorities, I guess some of the obvious ones would be around things like CPA, cost to acquire a new customer, cross-channel optimization, how do you manage your messages more effectively to consumers in multiple channels, and managing the user journey and measuring the effectiveness and impact of that, so attribution, if you like. The first use case really is quite straightforward, but absolutely business critical. Acquisition and acquiring new customers is what your business needs to do to survive. Retention and churn management is key, but if you haven't got new customers coming in at the top, clearly you're going to struggle. So with that in mind, it's how does the DMP more accurately get our messages, or your messages, in front of the right people. So if we think about how we might optimize a campaign by segment, I can define my target audience as discussed above using any attribute or piece of data available to me. And we might take advantage of the following facts, and we probably will. I know the user IDs of everyone who belongs in an audience. I know the user IDs of everyone who's seen a particular campaign. So purple dots are people who might be in an audience. The green circles are people who might have seen a particular campaign. And therefore I can cross this data, I can link this data to start to analyse how a campaign performed by the audiences who've seen it. And in practice, what I've done, I've defined what I think my best audience is, and then I can start to run my campaign targeting different audiences or segments, as you can see them on the screen in front of you. After a few days, though, I will have gathered enough data within the DMP to start analysing this campaign by audience group. And I guess by the law of averages, some subsets of my audience will perform better on average than others. Some are better and some are worse. In this instance, the purple groups are those who are performing better, and the grey groups are those who are performing less well. But the point is, using some of the overlaps that we've discussed, I can start to understand those overlaps. We can start to then identify the overperforming metrics, and then, as I say, those who are underperforming. And then, I guess fairly obviously, we can tweak the audience definition to focus on users who we think are actually likely to respond. Product A repeat purchases, Mosaic Group AO2, or indeed iPad users in this instance. But by readjusting my targeting based on the data coming back from a given campaign, I'm driving efficiency in my media spend. The concept is not rocket science, but the technology and the data, I guess, absolutely is. If we think about then optimizing across multiple channels, we can think about this notion of frequency analysis and frequency capping, and please don't be put off by the use of a maths graph there. One thing we take for granted in the digital context is the ability to set a frequency cap, as I've already mentioned, on any given campaign. And indeed, I guess this is one of the features that absolutely relies on a consistent ID being understood. And it is a good tool, of course, but it's a slightly blunt instrument, I guess, for controlling wastage. Now, typically, you or I are limited to applying that cap to one channel at a time. But of course, most marketers have several platforms and channels that they use, and they want to apply a cap to the individual, the person, not the channel. However, if we think about the commercial models that the channel owners use, well, the fault gets bigger because they're incentivized to make most money. They want to take all of your budget. They want all of the impressions to be served through their channel. So we've got a bit of a conflict there. But if we're considering the example above, the DMP tracks every exposure. So I can start to understand how many impressions a user has seen for a given campaign across multiple channels. However, when I compare that to my conversion curve, as you can see, there's quite a big difference. There's a sweet spot of impressions to drive the most conversions. Of course, these numbers are indicative, but typically, actually, the conversion curve usually fits to a skewed normal distribution model. Now, again, quite simply, I guess what we can see is there are two ways to try and drive return on investment here. First, stop the overexposure on the right-hand side. Those users who are never going to convert. So insert a cap on how many impressions you want to show them, all in the DMP. Second, in the left-hand side, redirect spend to those who are still underexposed. At the moment, I've spent some money, but not enough, to definitely drive a conversion, and therefore that's basically wasted spend. The results of this, well, the sweet spot in the middle is larger, and you're cutting down on your wasted spend. Just think, the DMP allows you to more accurately target receptive customers, giving you the power to speak to more of the right people and more consistently. And this is absolutely based on their ongoing interaction history with you. Okay, if we think about the user journey analysis, or how do we understand the user journey, in this case, we can see how a DMP can help that user journey and indeed optimization. And it's a hugely important, I guess, important aspect of understanding and optimizing a marketing strategy. And the key, I guess, to this journey optimization is attribution. Okay, so in both of the previous examples, we've used the DMP to ingest and unify our different data sources, transmit audience data to an execution platform to inform the decision-making process, and then ingest campaign performance data to drive iterative improvements. We've also seen how the DMP can transmit to and ingest from multiple platforms at once. But let's look at this at a different angle. Let's look at this from the perspective of an individual consumer, remembering what we said right at the very start of this webinar about the empowered consumer, what they think about, what they care about. The DMP gathers the data tied to an ID, and that's with a timestamp, and that's from every engagement, whether it's a user seeing your adverts, looking at product pages on your sites, purchasing an item, or even leaving a review. And it does so, or it can do so, regardless of the device a user uses to connect. Now, I can start to link together the individual touch points that I have with a user, and therefore I can start to understand the paths that a user or users are taking to conversion. As you can see, it can be a fairly complex path in there. But I'm not just limited to those journeys that end in a conversion. Because I ingest data from all of my outbound marketing campaigns, I can start to understand what journeys users are taking who don't convert, who don't end up buying from you, but you have served a message to them. And this understanding can go a significant way to understanding, or starting to understand, the most appropriate attribution model you should apply. This, in truth, isn't a problem that a DMP can solve by itself, but it can definitely provide a lot of the raw data needed to get to that solution. Sorry if I'm not too soon. And I guess just thinking about that, I can now track every user engagement and add a timestamp, as I've said. And this includes any campaign engagement and any purchasing activity. 2, I'm not limited to looking at my existing customers. I can gather data from users who saw a campaign but didn't convert, as I've said. 3, I can now start to understand all of my user journeys, how they move through the funnel and as they engage with me. And 4, it's this that allows me to determine the best attribution model for a given campaign, or indeed a given channel and a given audience segment. I'll let the challenges early, but just let's address them because it's important. Whilst it's true that all of this sounds like some sort of nirvana, and certainly we believe the DMP will help most businesses and brands, it's also true to say that most of the brands who've bought access to DMPs have actually found it not as straightforward as simply plugging in the thing and off you go. And in order to get the best from a DMP, certainly we believe a degree of expertise is required. It's not actually believe. a degree of expertise is required. And for me, that's not just thinking about how the thing works, but understanding how data will add value, and indeed what data will add value, how to test, how to refine, how to optimize, how the channels work in conjunction with one another, all things that people need to understand. And I would say if there is one failing in this space, it's that the providers of this technology or the products tend to sell the software, but not the service. And the brands have, I would say, in the past been left scratching their heads somewhat as to how to see the benefits. Managed services offerings do exist. Luckily enough they exist from people like Experian, and certainly we would say this can help get around where, how to drive value, but also get around the need to invest in heads too early, certainly until a return on investment and benefits have been accrued. We've already said with regard to silos, we think DMPs can help break down those silos as data becomes democratized within the organization. We have to accept that data is a common asset. Certainly it needs curating, but owning that across the business is something that the business needs to buy into as a concept and change culturally. And again, I'd say we're seeing more of that across more brands as we talk to them. Everybody wants to improve the quality of their own first-party data, the information that you have on your customers and consumers and users. Some of this is just about quality and accuracy, and there are data quality offerings out there in the market. Again, thankfully Experian offers these that will clean up data and allow you to have a more accurate view of what's going on within the DMP. But also, usually within the DMP or data providers aligned to them, there is the opportunity to overlay third-party data that will enhance your view of your customers and improve that understanding. Once you've done that, it's absolutely about getting the rules in place, moving forward that allow for more accurate and more relevant data collection and relevant standards. In terms of data anxiety around sharing, this is a real issue, right? It's not just being overly anxious. Your customers are your business, and the legal as well as the reputational issues that abound from making errors with data management are significant and well known and cause people sleepless nights, I'm sure. Our view is working with a brand or a business that gets data security and can prove its process is secure is absolutely key. The actual physical management of data is a challenge many of these providers can answer. But going forward, that we would say looking at the history, the culture, and the approach to managing data is key. So have those conversations and be certain and comfortable, again, that the history, the culture, the approach is right from those providers. Measurement, just briefly, measurement's much easier when it comes to media efficiency because you can understand that CPA quite literally and quickly. Marketing effectiveness, user journeys can be a bit trickier, but there are techniques and tactics in place that you can use. I'm conscious of time now, so just thinking about data partnerships very quickly as we finish off. And certainly about the future. We've spoken about how a DMP, can transfer data to a system of your choice. That system, in theory, could be another DMP. So in this case, you may choose to share your audience, your customers, with a partner who could use it to define an audience within their DMP. Now, the common use case for that will be sharing a target audience, quite often customer basis, with a publisher to run a direct audience takeover campaign across a network. And that's increasingly common these days. But actually, for those of you who want to consider it, it could actually allow you to monetize your own data asset. You create the audience, you allow people to buy access to it, and allow those products and services to be promoted to them. It's certainly worth considering. Anyway, as we summarize, we definitely think the DMP will make a positive impact on your business. We think actually regardless of the channel of the campaign, the DMP has that potential. So whether it's email, social display, programmatic, even addressable TV in the future, we think it's got a role to play. And we think also it's kind of regardless of your goal or your objective, whether it's retention, whether it's brand awareness, whether it's customer loyalty, retargeting, engagement, or acquisition. Certainly we think the DMP has got a bigger role to play than just programmatic. And to that end, I think what we'd say is just think about these questions on the right-hand side. If the answer to any of the questions is yes, then we think you'd benefit from a conversation about a DMP. Are you involved? Is your brand involved in programmatic advertising? There are efficiencies to be gained if the answer is yes. Do you speak directly to consumers? If you're B2C, I think it'd be difficult for you to answer anything other than yes there. Is there a need for efficiency in your media spend? Very few organisations will say they get it right every time. Do you need to personalise your communications? Make it more relevant to that empowered consumer? Again, in most instances, we think the answer would be yes. And do you currently operate in more than one channel? If the answer is yes, it's worth having the conversation. And if it's worth having the conversation, it's worth thinking about that empowered consumer. Can you tilt that balance of power a little bit more in your favour? So you have more of the understanding, you have more of the data to enable that empowered consumer to buy and engage from your brand. Thank you very much for listening into that, the webinar. I'm conscious again of time. So I will seek to address a couple of questions. And then we can allow you to get back to your day. So just looking through, first one is it possible to do brand marketing through programmatic and using a DMP? Definitely yes. I mean, I think the programmatic arena has largely been focused on performance advertising because it's easy to measure the CPA. However, we do think that misses the trick. If data has got a role to play in targeting an audience for your brand, and that might actually mean excluding certain audiences, or indeed managing communication to certain segments, and that can absolutely happen within a brand message, then yes, the DMP can do that. So we would say to think about it only in terms of direct response or performance misses some of the potential, a lot of the potential of the DMP. I'll take one more question here because I am very conscious of time, but again we'll follow up with all the others, and there's been a few in a second. Oh, sorry, via email. There's a few of this. What will this cost me in terms of money and effort? I've touched on some of this. A lot of the providers in this space are keen to sell the software, but not necessarily the service. And when you sell software that needs to be integrated into your business, that doesn't mean you're buying a license, you're also buying time and effort from your IT department. And that's fine, but you should be very clear on what the cost is going to be. We think some of the managed service offerings, where you can more or less work to a pay-as-you-go offering, or somewhat similar to that anyway, significantly cuts the upfront investment down significantly. Beyond that, it's very much linked to the size of the audiences, the number of profiles that you generate, the amount of activity that you do. Our sense would be, therefore, that the cost of this can be anything from £70,000 to £80,000 a year to in excess of £500,000 a year. The key is not what it costs, but the value that it provides and the value that you can measure. Okay, so we'll leave it there. As I said, we'll definitely get back to the emails that we've had with the other questions, some of which are repeated. So, but we'll come back to all of them. I'll thank you again for your time. If people do want to email us directly afterwards with any questions or follow-ups, then do certainly let us know. You can see the email address there at marketing.services@uk.experian.com. Okay, thank you once again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.